Daniel and the Garden of Thoughts. Daniel was staying at a farmhouse for the summer. It was old and beautiful, sitting in the middle of rolling green fields that stretched as far as he could see. The air smelled fresh, like warm earth after the rain, and wildflowers danced in the wind. Every morning Daniel woke to the sound of birds singing outside his window, and every night he fell asleep listening to the distant hum of crickets. It was peaceful here, so quiet that he could hear the rustling leaves of the wind through the trees at the edge of the farm. One afternoon, with nothing to do and the sun shining brightly in the sky, Daniel decided to go for a walk. He pulled on his boots and he stepped outside. He felt the warmth of the sun on his face and the grass beneath his fingers as he ran his hand over the tall blades of grass swaying beside him. He set off. He walked past the barn, past rows of vegetables on the farm that were growing neatly in the soil, and he passed the old stone wall that curved around the farm. He passed a field of sheep. He kept going. And then something new caught his eye. It was a path. A narrow dirt path, half hidden by that tall grass, and winding its way in the other direction of the farm that he hadn't seen before. Curious, he took a step forward, then another, and the deeper he walked, the quieter everything became. The trees grew taller, and the air smelled different, like rich earth or something else, something warm, like cinnamon and sunlight. And then, just ahead, he saw it. There was a gate, not an ordinary gate, but an old wooden one, nestled between two great oak trees, their branches twisting high above. The gate was slightly open, as if it had been waiting for him. Daniel hesitated. Should he go in? He glanced over his shoulder. He could still see the farmhouse in the distance, standing golden in the sunlight, so he wasn't far. Taking a deep breath, he reached out and touched the gate. The wood was smooth and warm beneath his fingers, and as he pushed it open, a soft creaking sound filled the air, like the gentle sigh of wind through the trees. Beyond the gate, the path continued, leading him deeper into what looked like the most beautiful garden he had ever seen. The air felt softer here, and the trees with thick, sturdy trunks stood tall. Their branches were full of golden leaves that shimmered when they moved. Beneath them, flowers of every colour bloomed, some stretching towards the sun, others curling sleepily into themselves. The earth beneath his feet felt different too. Not like grass, not like dirt, but something softer and more comforting, like a cloud or a deep warm blanket. Daniel took a slow breath in and then out. The moment he did, something inside of him felt lighter, like all the little worries in his mind had been gently carried away by the wind. And then, ahead on the path, he saw someone. A man was kneeling in the soil, tending to a bed of flowers. His hands were moving gently, pushing the petals as though they were something. His hands had holes in the palm, one hole in each palm. And they were brushing the petals as though they were something precious. He wore simple clothes. His hair was soft and dark. When he looked up, his eyes were kind, so kind that Daniel felt for a moment that he had met him before, even though he wasn't sure. The man smiled and looked up. "Hello, Daniel." Daniel blinked in surprise. "How do you know my name?" he asked. The man wiped his hands on his knees and stood up, still smiling, with kind eyes. "I know all the names of those who visit my garden," he said. Daniel looked around. "Your garden?" he asked. The man nodded. "Yes. And do you know what kind of garden this is?" Daniel shook his head. The man placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "This is the garden of thoughts." Daniel frowned, a bit confused for a moment. "The garden of thoughts?" he said. The man nodded. "Every thought you think is planted here. Some grow into beautiful flowers, others grow into weeds. But the most wonderful thing is that you get to choose what stays and what goes." Daniel looked around, noticing for the first time that while most of the garden was full of light and beauty, here and there tangled vines curled around the bases of trees and small patches of weeds poked through the soil. They weren't big, not yet, but they looked different from all the bright, beautiful flowers beside them. He looked back at the gardener. "I get to choose?" he asked. The gardener's eyes twinkled. "Yes, Daniel, you do. You get to choose what grows in your garden." The gardener knelt back down and touched one of the weeds. "Would you like me to show you how?" Daniel nodded slowly, curiosity growing inside him. The gardener smiled. "Then let's begin." The gardener reached into the soil and tugged gently at one of the small weeds. It came loose easily, its thin roots tangled but weak. "This weed started as a tiny thought," the gardener said, turning it over in his hand. "A thought that whispered to you, 'What if I can't do it? What if I fail?' It seemed small at first, but as it stayed in the soil, it grew bigger and bigger, taking up space where something beautiful could have bloomed." Daniel looked down at the weed, and he thought about the times he had felt that way, like when he tried to climb the big oak tree at the back of the farm and had slipped down, or the time he had wanted to answer a question at school but he'd been too afraid of getting it wrong. The gardener placed the weed aside. "Now watch," he said. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a tiny seed. It looked small, almost too small to make a difference, but as he placed it into the earth and covered it gently with soil, something incredible happened. The ground shimmered faintly, and before Daniel's eyes, a tiny little shoot pushed its way up from the earth. And it kept growing. It stretched towards the sun, leaves unfurling like little hands opening wide. Within moments, that small shoot had grown into a strong, bright flower, golden petals glowing in the warm light. "This," the gardener said, "is the thought that says, 'I can try again. I can learn. I'm growing every day.' See how quickly it changes the garden." Daniel stared at the flower and then at the weed still lying on the ground. "So if I stop thinking the bad thought, the weed won't grow?" The gardener nodded. "Exactly. And if you replace it with something good, something true, then something beautiful will take its place." Daniel knelt down, his fingers tracing the petals of the new flower. "What about worries?" he asked. "Like when I think, what if something bad happens? What if I will have a bad dream?" The gardener's smile never faded. Instead, he touched another weed nearby. "Ah, yes, worry thoughts. Those are tricky because they grow quickly if we let them." He pulled the weed from the ground, and this time Daniel noticed its roots were longer, twisting deep beneath the soil. "Worry feels big," the gardener said, "but it only grows if we feed it. Every time we think about the what-ifs, every time we think about that worry, and we let it stay, the roots stretch deeper. But when we replace the worry with trust, when we remember that God is with us always, we stop feeding the weed, and it stops getting bigger." He reached into his pocket again, pulling out another seed. "Try it," he said, handing it to Daniel. Daniel hesitated. "What do I do?" he asked. "Plant it," the gardener said, "and when you do, think a new thought, one that feels true and safe." Daniel pressed the seed into the soil. As he did, he whispered, "I am safe. I am loved. I don't have to be afraid." The moment the words left his lips, the earth stirred, Another shoot came out, and it grew. And it grew some more, and another flower bloomed. This time, a deep calming blue, with petals as soft as the sky above. Daniel grinned. "It worked," he said. The gardener chuckled. "Of course it did. You see, Daniel, every time you have a thought, you're planting a seed. Every thought you plant will grow. If you plant kindness, you will see kindness. If you plant worry, it will take up space where peace or happy thoughts should grow instead. You are the gardener of your own mind. You get to choose." Daniel sat back on his heels, looking around the garden. For the first time, he noticed how many weeds were there, and how many empty spaces where beautiful flowers could be. He felt a tiny spark of excitement. "I want to plant more good thoughts," he said. The gardener smiled. "Let's do it together." The gardener reached into the soil and gently tugged at one of the small weeds. It came loose easily, its thin roots tangled but weak. "This weed started as a tiny thought," the gardener said, "when you were having a bad day at school and worried about your maths lesson. You see how quickly that grew?" Daniel smiled, remembering, and he reached down and he pulled out the weed, and out it came. The gardener handed him a seed. "Now, what are you going to plant in its place?" he asked. And Daniel said, "I can do maths. When it's hard, I try again, and I keep trying. I try hard at maths." "Well done," the gardener said. "Now, pop that seed in and cover it with soil." And so Daniel did. And the flower grew and took up the space so no weeds could grow. The gardener walked Daniel through the garden, showing him all different kinds of thoughts. Some that made him feel strong and happy, and others that had once made him feel small or afraid. With each new flower he planted, Daniel felt lighter and peaceful. He turned to the gardener. "What if I forget how to do this?" The gardener knelt beside him. "Then just close your eyes and come back here," he said gently. The garden is always inside you. Every time you choose a kind thought, a true thought, you're tending to your garden. Every time you let go of a fear, you make space for something beautiful to grow. Every time you feel sad, there will be a thought behind it, one that isn't true, one that doesn't belong there. You need to find that weed and you need to pull it out. And then you look for what is true, what is real, what is good. And you plant it in your garden and you let it grow and you let it take up the space. Thoughts that you are loved, that you are safe, that you are brave and you can always try again, that you will always be loved, you will always be accepted, and it doesn't matter if you get things wrong sometimes, because you can always try again. Daniel's eyes felt heavy now. He yawned. He realized how late it was. And he realized that his parents might be missing him. "It's time for you to go now," the gardener said softly. "But this place will always be here. And you, Daniel, are the gardener." Daniel said, "But I don't even know your name." The gardener smiled. "It's Jesus," he said, "and I'll always be the head gardener here to guide you." Daniel turned around. he walked back down the path through the farm. And that night, in bed, when he closed his eyes, he took himself back to the garden again. He felt peaceful. He felt light. He sat surrounded by all the beautiful flowers. He let a breath in and out, and as he drifted to sleep, the gardener's words whispered through his mind. I choose good thoughts. My heart is happy. I am safe. I am loved. And now, as you rest here feeling warm and safe, you can remember Daniel's secret. Your thoughts are like little seeds, and you get to choose which ones grow. With each breath, you can imagine a beautiful garden inside of you, breathing in and breathing out. There's nothing to worry about now. You're safe and you're loved. You are the gardener of your own thoughts.